In northern Rwanda, a series of amazing miracles. And to understand the impact of the story of Shira, you must begin with Muzo. A young student heard my meetings in Samaduha, which is near the Adventist University in Kigali. In broken English and on paper, he pleaded with me to go to his village. I didn't think that God would say yes, but I prayed. And he said yes. So I told Stephen Etienne, yes, God has said yes. He went to his village. They began the usual proceedings of having the head elder write the letter, talking to the pastor, talking to the conference leaders. And we were surprised because the answer came back emphatically, you cannot come. The head elder had proceeded everything, had made the requests as is appropriate. But then they began asking for documents. First they asked, while I was in Butari University, they asked for someone to send quickly by car the evidence that I had entered the country appropriately and that I had a visa stamped in my passport. The pastor, Abraham, in the church of Butari, paid for that himself and sent it up there quickly. Then they asked for the name of my conference president, my North American Union conference president. I had just ridden on the airplane with the North America Union president, Jerry Patzer, and his wife, as far as Amsterdam. So they knew me, they knew I was related to Julie, who had sung for his meetings in Russia, and they knew Julie because they were in the conference of Upper Columbia Conference when my sister Julie died. They knew she had a beautiful voice, and they knew us because also Jack, my brother, had translated some for them in New Guinea when they did a series of meetings there. But during the phone calling, they were in another country, and then later, when they were back, they refused to write a letter of recommendation. So it made them more sure that there was something wrong with me. So when we returned from Butari, we had some trouble. They notified us in the email, that there was some difficulties. We were so troubled we spent nights in prayer and also alerted the prayer warriors to pray. We continued with our plans, and email kept coming in and phone calls, you better just fly home. But we knew that when God commands to go and do a job, we had to do that job, or the blood of the people who were lost because we did not obey, they would be on our garments. We don't want that. We want to obey. Pastor Abraham helped us get our luggage. The treasurer of that conference helped with his pickup. The sanctuary was loaded. And the treasurer, in his own vehicle, was asking many questions. We believed in this quotation in Selected Messages, Book 2, page 242 and 243. We have to act positively in faith. Keep looking to Jesus, offering up silent prayers of faith, taking hold of his strength. Whether you have any manifestation of feeling or not, go right forward as if every prayer offered was lodged in the throne of God and responded to by the one whose promises never fail. Go right along, singing and making melody to God in your hearts, even when depressed by a sense of weight and sadness. I tell you, as one who knows, light will come, joy will be ours, and the mists and clouds will be rolled back, and we pass from oppressive power of the shadow and darkness into clear sunshine and his presence. So in the car, Jenny and I sang Psalms 91, Psalm 23, Matthew 4, Matthew 5, 1 Corinthians 13. These are chapters of the Bible that I have taught my children and I also have learned. So we sang these. Revelation 2 verse 10, fear none of these things. And we sang, hold out your light. While we were driving along, the driver turned and he asked, how do you know? How do I know God was telling me to go? What if it was Satan? I said, John 10:27, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. Then I told him, Jenny has sheep. And when I talk to her sheep, they don't know me, and they run. When she talks, they know her, and they come. They respond to her, and they eat. And he said, well, how do you know if it's God's plan? I said, Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6, in all thy ways acknowledge him. And I do that. And he shall direct thy paths. I am acknowledging him in my ways, and he does direct my paths. Well, how do you know his will? How does he communicate to you, was his next question, translated by Pastor Abraham. Well, I said, sometimes I hear his voice. Sometimes he gives me a sign. Sometimes, by the turn of events, providential things are worked out for me, and I can see it is the right way. Sometimes, when I open my Bible, there's a Bible verse before me that supports the direction I should go. Sometimes there's a promise that will encourage me. Oh, he thought on those things while he was driving. He said, I want to hear some more. Tell me some stories of how God has talked to you. So I told him the story of India and how God spoke loudly to me to move through the Red Sea when I was being attacked by a gang. I told of how one time he told me in a dream to go out of the town by bus 3 days earlier instead of going by train on Friday. And I did. When I reached home, there was an email from an angry man who was waiting for us at the train. And God had showed us in a dream what this man was thinking, thoughts of adultery, and he was intending to do us harm. He could go anywhere on the train that he wanted. And one time God showed me in a vision a lady needing help. She was beaten. Her right eye was black. And I was awake during that, so it was a vision. And God helped me find that lady later, 6 days later, just before I was getting on an airplane. And he gave me wisdom what to do in helping her. Plus, he showed me many texts that he is very unhappy when there's abuse in the home, and he does not tolerate it, and those who do this abuse, he will destroy them. The driver was thinking about these things, and so was the treasurer. Then finally we arrived at the Adventist University, and there was Stephen. He was to meet me there. He was talking to someone as we drove up. He was living in his sister's house while he was going to school in Kigali. He tried to help us in arranging transport up the mountain. The chaplain of the university, Jerome, came and greeted the different ones in the truck with us. Now, Jerome was the one who baptized those who wanted baptism after our meetings in the Adventist University. He was very happy. Everyone that was standing there were unloading our sanctuary. It's very heavy. There was the president of the North and the treasurer of the South greeting each other, and Jerome the chaplain. I saw a lovely, beautiful, empty pickup that was just the right size to load up our things. I learned that it was operated by the president of the North, and soon it was to go there, empty. Well, that was the transport I thought the Lord had planned for us. But I was disappointed because the president was confused. He wasn't sure that this was God's plan. He said, well, you can go at your own risk. It's a muddy time and there's a rainy road that's really slippery. I'm afraid. I said, well, I'm not afraid of rain or mud. When God tells me to go somewhere, it's safer to go where he says. He said, well, it's very dangerous. I said, well, I have 45 angel guards. I am not worried. He said, you could get sick. Well, I could get sick anywhere. Then he said, why not go to a larger city? But we're not ready for you yet. You'll have to wait for the larger city. We will not support you or help you in any way. You go at your own risk and your own desires. It's too remote of a village. Security is not an easy thing. We cannot protect your daughter. I said, don't worry. She has angels guarding her also. He said, well, I'm a servant of the Lord too. He said, why do you want to go? I said, God has commanded me and I must do this, His will, or their blood will be on my garments. It's safer to be where God commands than to disobey. I will not go home. You must allow this gospel work. He said, okay, and I'll pray for you. I myself am a servant of God. I said, good, thank you. Now I'm going right now. And his phone rang, so I hurried out the door. I wanted to run through the door that was open just a crack. But I said, you must promise that you will do no harm to the pastor. You will not take away his job. You will allow him to baptize the people who want it. He said in the presence of Dr. Fedidas and Jenny as witness that he would not cause any problems to the pastor. The pastor was so frightened by the phone call. He pleaded that we not come, but I moved in faith. We found a student with a Toyota pickup just like the one the president was driving, and we made arrangements to go right away up the mountain. God's luggage was going, Matthew 10:40, he that receives you receives me. And so we moved in faith. As we were standing there with our things, Stephen was told some very strong, cutting words that if I got sick and died, Stephen was the one responsible, and that my blood would be on him, not them. And Stephen said, the Lord will be with us. You know, palm tree Christians are not afraid in the storm. Jesus was standing there giving me holy boldness. Like this picture of the children with the palms in their hands at Butari University. Pastor Abraham had escorted us all the way to Kigali, and he was very kind and very concerned what might be happening to us. We bought a tarp, for it was raining so hard. I asked if it was against the law for 3 to be up front and was assured it'd be no problem. Then we were stopped and fined by police for 2 in the front with the driver. Later we were stopped by police until we could not go into the mountains with such a load on the pickup in the night. Again, they wanted money. We moved ahead in faith and stayed in an overnight lodging up on the mountain, found along the road. It had a door we could lock and a bunk bed, and we were glad to rest. I kept remembering the president had promised to pray. Was he praying? We sure were. 4 verse 8 says, I will both lay me down in peace and sleep, for thou, Lord, only makest me dwell in safety. We heard the drunks and the shouting and people in that hotel that were not godly people. It made me shiver. Jenny was on the upper bunk bed and I was on the bottom. But Jesus says, as David said in Psalm 4 verse 8, I can both lie down and sleep in peace, because God's the one who makes me safe. You know, David was in some caves and people were chasing him, and he had to be courageous for the Lord. So I had the same God who could protect me. As she slept, I prayed, oh God, don't let any harm come to her. Our lodging only cost us $4. The road was very slippery. 4 brothers helped put things off the truck when he got up there at midnight. They had to push the truck and remove all those things. They got stuck. As Stephen reached the village while we slept in the lodge, it was late, so late. It was so slippery. They woke up a family that had 4 sons willing to help. One brother helped in going to the church elder. The church key was held by the elder brother. The supplies were locked into a room. The older brother of Stephen stayed with a mattress and all God's materials. Stephen returned to the lodge and reported all was successfully put in the church. The time was midnight, about 2.5 hours after they had left us in the lodge. In the morning, we began praying and singing, Lord, in the morning thou shalt hear. And Stephen knew we were awake. And he knocked on our door and he said, let's pray. We really need prayer right now. Our next step was to clear the local authorities of the government for permission to stay in his village. We made friends with Winnie in the government. She wanted to help us. She helped type up the letter of request and she got it passed. And up the mountain, there was no public transport. So she offered her own truck. There was that beautiful white pickup. She was going to go up there with us to make sure that we were safe. Personally, she was taking it on herself. She asked us to pay for the gas to fill up her tank. When we got there, we went up this little path to the church. And the church people were standing around. Inside the church, there was an unfriendly group. And horrible things were said. The government leader said, you know, Mommy, it's not safe for you. Come, I'll take you back. I said, just let me stay in the hotel. We'll get back up the mountain later. No, she says, I have to take you clear back to the capital in my pickup. I have to make sure that no one harms you in the night. So she took us all the way back to Kigali. We called Pastor Paul and asked if we could sleep on his floor. And he said, no, but you can sleep in our beds. And so they fixed up and fed us, and we wept and cried on our faces before the Lord for a week, waiting for our ticket to go home. We went home. God said to go back. I cried, no, Lord, I don't want to go there. Why don't you send me to a place that's so wonderful and people love me, and please, Lord. And he said, do you love me? And I said, yes. Then feed my sheep. Oh, Lord, they're terrible. There's lots of sheep everywhere else. He said, do you love me? Yes. Then feed my sheep. Oh, I was sure that I was going to die if I went back up in there. They had rejected me. Finally, I agreed to do what God asked, and I asked him when to go, and he said to go in September, and he gave me the date. So I went in September of 2007, and when we arrived in the union office, the president welcomed us and said he would get a car, and we needed to take the sanctuary, so we arranged a truck to go up there again. And we were instructed to go to the conference office so that they could get us a generator. As we arrived there, they began shouting. There was confusion, and we were rejected. And after 2 hours of that, we went home to Pastor Paul's house. Again, I was on my face before the Lord. I didn't want to eat or drink. I said, Lord, I know you sent me. What is going on? Please do something. Well, when I was back home, I had sent a letter to the General Conference to Mark Finley, and we have been partners and supporters of his It Is Written projects for many years, almost about 10 years, from when Jenny was little, and he would greet us at the partnership weekends, and Jenny would say, hi, Mark Friendly, and he'd say, oh, I hope I am. She didn't know how to say Finley. Anyway, he remembered us, and he wrote a letter of recommendation in our behalf. It arrived in the spam mailbox of my email, so I didn't find it. I was going back to the email every day, asking people to pray, and then I was on my face again, fasting and praying. Then I looked in the spam mailbox and found Mark Finley's letter. Oh, wow. There it was. I presented that to a man working in the embassy that was our friend. He contacted the president, showed him, encouraged him to sign his name and to the bottom of Mark Finley's letter, and then we had our way opened for us. This man working in the embassy also went to the public health director there in Kigali, and medical permission was given for me to treat people. Everything was opened. The government opened up their offices for us. We worked right in the headquarters. We had clinics, but there were only 9 days left before our time was up there. So we thought, how can we do a whole crusade in only 9 days? morning and evening, the people came. They came so early, we just started having meetings at 5 in the morning. We thought maybe 6, but they came at 5. They walked in the dark for 2 or 3 hours to come in here. Then we had clinic. People were everywhere. How could I see all these people who were coming for help? We had our sanctuary in the outer shelter of this big office that they had given us to live in. And the people stood. When it rained, we didn't have any benches. We didn't have anything. We just simply did our program there with 2 big screens, one overlooking the valley so people on the other mountains in the distance could look and see at the pictures, and they could hear the songs, and they came. It was really amazing. And even more than that, there was a group of children that pounded on the window when we were so tired. By noon, we would try to cook a little something to eat and then take a nap. Well, the children got out of school for recess. Some of them got out at noon, and they came pounding on the window, "Give us more stories. We want to hear about Jesus." Wow, they were so hungry for the truth. As we finished that crusade, there were 200 wanting baptism, and about 114 were actually baptized. We had rented this trailer out of Kigali. The embassy helper, Reuben, had done a wonderful thing in helping to arrange for this baptistry. The night before our last couple meetings, there was extra trouble and resistance from a confused group of church people, and there was a pillar of cloud over the government office to live in, to work out of, and to have our sanctuary program on the side under the eaves. Anyway, all day long there was a pillar of cloud, so I took this picture, and in the night there was a pillar of fire above us. To me, that is the most touching and beautiful evidence of God's care for us, of any of the miracles that He's done in the past. As the fire burned there, the sister to my translator looked back and saw it and showed other people. I was asleep, but I believe her. She said it looked just like my pictures of the pillar of cloud over the sanctuary. Here's a picture of the baptistry. And the government worker who helped us get all of this together was there proudly watching the baptism. Many soldiers that had been commanded to guard us were baptized. They had been commanded to listen, to guard us, and they accepted the truth and were baptized. We went to a village that was requested by one of the students out of Butari University. His name was James, and his father invited us for a few days before our airplane was to depart. While we were there, there was a man who came to Gisenyi village with an agenda. In spite of the letters of Mark Finley, my pastor, the president of our conference, he wanted to discover for himself if I really was a Seventh-day Adventist. And then he, as a district leader, wanted me to come into his area and also work. He wrote out his request. And so did Martin, a station director. Later, this year, I have seen him again. But now I'm jumping ahead in the story. While I was in Muzo, the translation was partly done by a man from Shira who was teaching in the Anglican school, and he's a Seventh-day Adventist. He said that there's a need in his village, would I please pray? Well, God said yes to his request, and he said I don't have to worry about being rejected in his village because there's nobody there, there's no church there, and he's the one that's going to help make sure everything's okay. He's going to feed me and house me, and there's no need to worry. So we didn't have to go through the same procedure of getting permission to go into that area. he took care of it all. And as he was translating, we had all kinds of difficulties with rain and projector burning from the generators pulsing power, and all we had left was felts. And Jenny said, "Mommy, let's not give up and go home. God sent us here. Let's do what we can." She had never used felts before, so I showed her what I used to do. I worked for 20 years with young children in the Sabbath school department with felts. So I showed her a few things, and I helped her pull out the felts. And
kandi yari umushumba w'intama za se.
He was very loyal, taking care of them.
Kandi yazigiragiraga akiranutse.
How many of you have sheep?
Ni bande bafite intama? Ni bande bafite intama mu rugo? Intama.
Okay.
Ni byiza.
I have 8 sheep.
Nanjye mfite intama 8.
Sometimes they can get to be a lot of work.
Kandi igihe kimwe na kimwe mba ndi kumwe nazo.
Well, he was looking after the sheep. A big bear came and started eating one of the lambs.
Maze igihe yarariho ari kwiga Bibiliya, hari igihe yariho aragiye ziriya ntama, yaraho ziriya ntama, idubu iraza itangira kuri.
Props were only the tabernacle without any of my slides. But the people came and they were interested. They got 70 hours of Bible studies. Water came down so heavy on the roof. And it's amazing. We had this music playing. Cast your bread upon the waters, and after many days it will return. Well, that text that they were singing is actually the theme of what has happened in this village. As we worked and gave the Bible to these people and loved them, God did some beautiful miracles for us. And they kept hugging us. Jenny learned the language enough to catch when the translation wasn't correct.
You're feeling so good.
Kandi uzatekereza yuko ibyaha gukora ibyaha ari byiza.
He just wants to kill you. Satan only wants to kill you.
Yesu icyo ashaka gusa ni kimwe. Yeah. Excuse me. Satani icyo ashaka gusa ni kimwe nuko kwica.
He only wants to kill you.
Icyo ashaka gusa nuko kwica.
But Jesus wants to give you eternal life.
Ariko Yesu we ashaka kuguha ubugingo buhoraho.
He wants to give you happiness.
Yesu ashaka kuguha umunezero.
The path that Satan offers is very broad.
Inyamara inzira ija ku rupfu rw'iteka ryose ni ngari cyane.
And it's very beautiful.
Kandi ni inzira nziza.
It's full of pleasure.
Yuzuyemo ibinezeza.
But at the end, there's eternal death.
Ariko nyuma hakabaho urupfu rw'iteka ryose.
When the baptism time came, there was an amazing thing. The Anglican Church shut off the water supply that was coming down the tube they were going to use to fill this hole that they had dug and lined with the tarp I gave them. And with the water shut off, what were they going to do? It was time for baptism, but no water. Then there was a big clap of thunder. I was taking a nap, and I woke up quickly. I said, "Jenny, quick, let's get up there. God's already arrived at the baptism. Let's see what he's doing. And let's see if they've got everything ready for the baptism. Let's not miss out on this one." So we hurried up the trail. The closer we got to the baptism tank, the water was pouring so hard. And I have a video clip of that I'll show you.
The people refused them water for the baptism. Then there was a big clap of thunder, and God's water started falling from the sky. They're trying to catch some as it comes off the edge of the house. You see here, the buckets are filling with water, and there's people in the house waiting for the rain to stop. They've been in there singing, and here God is putting water in buckets,
that rain poured and poured and poured. In just a few minutes there was lots of water in there. Then he stopped and gave them a chance to put some more in there. Then it wasn't quite enough, so he kept pouring during the baptism. The wind was blowing. It was so cold. We were shaking. Some of my pictures, well, of course the camera got wet. It really made trouble inside my camera. And then this heavy wind came, and the trees were bending clear over. The banana plants were bending clear over. The choir just kept singing, and you'll see that in the video. Well, right above the house where they had sheltered themselves during the rain was this twirling pillar of cloud. It was so awesome. It makes tears come to my eyes every time I realize God was standing right there doing it all, and he was letting us have a visible token of his presence. There he was standing there. The wind of the Holy Spirit symbol was there. God the Father, God the Holy Spirit, and Jesus were all there to witness this amazing baptism. There were people rejected from being baptized also, but there was a young man that had been rejected in Muzo. He had come to the meeting several times on the weekends, walking 4 hours from Muzo and then returning to go back to school. We calculated he had walked a total of about 96 miles. He was the fastest one with the buckets to fill that tank. Wow, we have pictures of him doing that. Notice around the baptistry tank, the water is just flooded everywhere, and people are just standing in mud and water. But they're all singing. Nothing seems to be bothering them. Jenny and I are shaking from the cold. Jenny is so cold that her teeth are chattering so hard that we decide to run back to the house. Right under the tip of the arrow, you see the young man from Muzo. There he is standing in line. It's raining, but he's not going to miss his turn for baptism this time. They had rejected him in the other village, but not this village. He's going to get it. Now, the picture's blurry, but you can see the lineup of people going into the baptistry tank. And the picture's blurry because I cannot hold still enough. My hand is shaking so bad from the cold. As I look up and see God in the cloud, I know that this is all his will. It's so inspiring to know God sent you and God is doing this. You're just there as his visible person, his visible hands, his audible voice, his feet. You're there because he commanded and you've obeyed, and he is able, because you obey, he's able to do the mightiest miracles. The mightiest miracles are seen when there's unity in the team. When there's division and people are causing you trouble, you don't see the mighty beauty of the power of God as much. We ran to the home of the teacher gospel, and Jenny climbed into bed trying to get warm. I hurried and started heating up water and put it in some water bottles and tucked them around her body. While she's in bed shivering away and these hot water bottles are trying to get her warm, I tried to warm her with my own body, but nothing seemed to be helping. I prayed for her. Suddenly, outside her window, the people are singing, "Give me the Bible." Oh, she couldn't stand it. She had to grab the Bibles and run out and start giving them. So I tucked the water bottles around her and sat her in a chair in the living room. And one by one, the people were brought in the house and received their Bibles with such joy. The little girl in the red dress was beaten up and her Bible was taken from her and sold. We were told that later by gospel. And the young man who had come so far, he was so excited to get his Bible. Everyone was happy to have a Bible. There were sick people that we treated. This poor young man had big swollen growth in his mouth, causing protrusion of his lips and tongue. His father also had an eye problem. He had been a drunkard. We spoke with a man in Loma Linda, and he gave us the diagnosis, and surgery is the only treatment for that poor man. We tried different glasses, but nothing seemed to help him. He wanted to read his Bible so bad. Jenny back home made bread to sell, to raise funds to build these new people a church. Then with the funds we purchased material, sewed choir robes, and had the children sing. I went back and made DVD of them in August. And took them some church building supplies to just get them encouraged to start making their foundation. They dreamed of a little church they saw across the valley that was white. They wanted one like that. We took in some tin, and so this is new territory. There was not an Adventist church there, so it's a real exciting thing to have so many baptized. After all of these wonderful things, I wrote and told them I was coming to help them in building a church. The timing was May. As I came close to the day, I was working in Burundi doing evangelistic meetings with Jenny. She had to go back on the airplane. We were so thankful we had Cheryl with us, Cheryl Collins, to escort Jenny back to the United States, traveling with her. It was a real blessing because I had to go on to Rwanda according to God's plan. But it was not the plan of those from northern Rwanda. In fact, they urged us not to come. And our friend Ruben, who had worked in the embassy and now is working with ADRA, by email encouraged me, I better not come into the country. Well, it's easy to get into Rwanda as a tourist. So I told him I was coming as a tourist to see the gorillas. Actually, my plans were to be building on the church and do what I could. And also I was hoping to have them allow me to do the evangelism that Stephen had lined up for me. I was alone, and Stephen met me, and he was my tour guide. We went up to the mountains and began taking things up the mountain with the money I had, taking cement blocks in trucks when the trucks got stuck. But God helped us get out. God, how they were able to push it out. We were very strong. As we got up to the top of the mountain again, we were stuck and we had to unload all the blocks, push the truck out, and it was so close to the edge where it could have toppled down over the hill. God was with us. We took out several loads, and when I had no more funds, I told them goodbye. And as I was looking up to God in heaven, I said, "Is that okay with you? I'm finished with my money, and I guess I'll move on. Maybe I'll go visit the village that I have been told not to go preach in. And Lord, if you want me to come back to this village, please give me a sign." Immediately there were 3 rainbows in the shape of a cup over the house of the teacher gospel. And I asked the Lord, "Does that mean you have 3 more truckloads to come up here? I'll go down and check the email, see if there's any money." There was no money. Then there was a shopkeeper that had been helping me, and she said, "Just come in my store and take what you need, and then you can get up the mountain, do what you need to do before you go home. I'll wait for my money." I said, "Maybe I won't be back till December 14. And she said, "No problem. I can wait. I will wait." I said, "I'm hoping to come back in September 14, but I'm not sure." Well, we took up the 3 more loads of materials, and the people in the village carried all those things up on their heads to the top of the mountain. The foundation was not finished yet, and they got busy getting their stones and getting things together and putting their foundation together. Finally, September 14, after we had finished our Philippine mission, we returned. I returned with an engineer. I want to show you pictures of how the blocks came together and the cement, and how God did so many miracles. There was a shortage of water. The Anglican Church shut off the water, and we were able to get water from puddles when the Lord watered really heavy. The weather was pretty good when we were constructing, but when the engineer wanted to water the walls, the rain came. God provided. They gathered lots of water from the puddles where the frogs were singing. So I told them, "We got a wall over here that's going to sing," because all the tadpoles they gathered and put into the cement there. The man who had sold the land to the church people had been told by the bishop that he should not allow us to sing and pray on that mountain. He told them, "The Adventists have the truth. I'm allowing them to do whatever they need to on that mountain." He came to visit us while we were on our project up there on the mountain. For 4 weeks, we worked really hard putting together the church, and it was so exciting to have volunteers from other churches come. Muzo Mountain people came. I was so excited. They came with these sticks, and I wondered, what are these sticks? What are they doing? Are they all having trouble walking? And they were sugar canes. It was their energy they were going to use for their meals while they were working. 4 hours they had walked to help us. All day long they were going this way and that, fetching water. And that wasn't easy. Sometimes they had to walk for 2 miles to get the water. And fetching gravel, carrying it up the mountain on their heads, getting cement blocks, all these supplies they had to carry on their head up the mountain. Then, when the day was the sun was getting low, they had to walk back to their village 4 hours. Wow. I asked how many in that group were baptized during our event in their village. 99% of them put their hands up. Wow. It was so exciting to see the fruit of the Holy Spirit. These people had not only taken in the blessings of the gospel, but they were now producing fruit. They were coming to help their neighbors in getting a structure to worship in. Wow, we were so excited. God is so powerful and so strong. He is able to do anything. He knew what he was doing when he asked me to build that church. He laid it on me so heavy, and then he laid it on my friends to please provide what they could to support this.
These children are all busy helping Jesus so the church can be made.
Elisha got very sick. In the night he was vomiting for several hours. I prayed for him. I gave him some charcoal and instructed him to rest his stomach, and I gave him some rice water off of the whole grain rice that I was cooking. And it had some McKay's chicken-like seasoning in it, and it was really good. With only that little bit,
It's raining and they're still bringing up
the tall engineer worked all day, and God healed him so quickly. I got really sick with my lungs. I could hardly breathe. I was gasping for air. I was coughing so bad. I sent an phone message to Jenny that I was giving up. I was just going to lay down my life. She called back, "No way, I'm calling a prayer chain. We're going to have everyone praying for you." And I could feel, when they started praying, I could feel the difference. Meanwhile, she asked for Elisha to get on the phone, and she instructed him, "You get the eucalyptus leaves, you boil them, and you have the vapor right by Mama's bed, and you get an onion and cut it in half and let her breathe that." And she instructed on getting the pure water for me to drink. All these things that God gave her wisdom to, that we had always done for other people when they were having trouble breathing. He did those things, and God did his part. And early the next morning, I was standing up, and I went up the hill, walking all that way up to the top, over 2 miles, and I preached for 2.5 hours. First I did one story, and then I sat down while Elisha did something, and then I preached the church service. God did that. He made me strong. While I was working on one certain wall of the church, he was strengthening me. At night I could hardly breathe, but in the daytime he was giving me strength. God did this thing. It's his power. This church is his. Every step we prayed, and he provided.
Even in the rain, isn't it beautiful? And the little one with a big rock on her head.
When we were out of money for the roof, and it was almost time, like 5 days before the engineer was to leave, I wondered, how are we going to get the trusses on there if we have no engineer to show us how to do it? And we prayed. There was no money. But God had been giving us money all the way up to that point. Every time we had something come due, I would just reach in my pocket, and there was money, the francs, to pay. And it seemed like there was more money than I had originally, that like God was multiplying.
I don't know what happened. I think she's stuck and can't get off her head.
It. But everything came to a standstill. It was Sabbath, and we, together as a church, we claimed 24 Bible verses for God to provide and prosper our hands.
That's what it was. She couldn't get it off.
We asked the Lord to forgive us our sins, and then we searched our hearts to see
Here comes the 85-year-old woman walking up in the mud in the rain. She's amazing. Jesus is helping her. She prays all the way up the hill.
from the stories that he was impressing me to tell, it was about taking honor to ourselves. Like Solomon's temple, he should have given the honor to God. Instead, well, he didn't collect any of the materials for that church his father had. People had given those things. And God had designed the church. He had given... For me? Thank you. Given those instructions to his father David, but he let everyone say it was Solomon's temple, and to this day, Solomon's temple is the way it's called. And also, there was
with such enthusiasm. God's work is going to go forward so well up here in the mountain. Me, what they have to go through here, as you can see, we're right up in the clouds at the top of the mountain, and the people were bringing those rocks even in the heavy rain, and they're eager to have a shelter so that when they have church service and it rains like this, they don't have to leave the church service and run for shelter. They are so thankful for all your gifts and providing the block and the rock, the cement, the tin, and everything. God will bless and multiply your resources. As you can hear the rain and see the wind blowing the trees, you know what a situation it must be sitting in church service and that suddenly have all these things happen to them. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I heard the thunder. It's getting to be quite a storm. The people are still wanting to bring up the rock, but right now they're under the edge of somebody's house at the bottom of this mountain, waiting for the storm to stop or to go on past. God has done this thing. When I am awesome, consider all the work of hands of mine. I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder. Then sings my soul, my Savior God to me. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God. How great thou art, how great thou art. From here you can see down into the village. That path over there is the one we walk up that way, clear over there, and then up in there, and down, and to Gospel's house. There's a cell phone on her. She's talking to somebody while she's walking up to the rock.
Ibizuba riva, riva mu gitundwe, ntugatinye ibihu, imbeho nyinshi, maze umusaruro, imirimo ishize, tuzishima cyane, tutulimiba.
King Nebuchadnezzar, who said, "Is not this great Babylon that I have built?" And then for 7 years he was crazy. So as we talked about those things, everyone searched their hearts, prayed, and asked God for money for the church roof, promising to follow God the best we could. And by 5:20 in that afternoon, Jenny called by telephone announcing that Aunt Gwen had given money for the church. And I got all excited. We called by telephone to the motorcycle driver. He came up to take me down to town where there was electricity and internet and banks, so I could collect the funds, check the email, And when I checked the email, there was more. There was enough to get the timber for the church and to pay Languida, who was waiting so long for all her supplies, money for the supplies that we had taken. I did not finish paying her off, but I gave her enough to make her very happy. And we did not finish all the buying all the timber because it was not available to be purchased. But back up on the mountain, as quickly as we could get there with supplies, we found there were lots of volunteers there cleaning the floor up and leveling the dirt that was on the church floor, getting it ready to be poured. But that will happen later as we have time and can go back there.
This is the way we build a church, build a church, build a church. This is the way we build a church, one loaf at a time.
What did they sing in their song?
Therefore, don't let them take away from times like this. If we come. Amen.
As we finished our time there, we weren't finished, but we had tin on the roof and 4 trusses up where they could crowd in really tight for a church and have some shelter from the sun and from the rain. The head elder promised that he was going to surprise Jenny when we come back December 14. He's going to have some more trusses made. They were following the truss plan that was emailed from one of the engineer colleagues of Elisha, who also schooled in Kenya. The times of all the volunteers being there, they needed to be fed, and I helped do the cooking. When all the people from Muzo came in the house of Teacher Gospel, I gave them each a fork, and they knew that there was food coming. Then they had to share dishes because there weren't enough dishes for all these volunteers. They passed out all the dishes, and then they all shared the food together. Up on the mountain, we would take the food up there. There wasn't enough dishes, so they all ate out of one big pan together and go 1, 2, 3, go. After we had thanked the Lord for the food, they ate together. May the Lord always bless His people. The simple means that they're willing. I just was amazed they were willing to eat together like that. Those Muzo people, some of them stayed for 2 weeks. We were so amazed how long they stayed. Also, we were amazed because the truck driver, Jimmy, was so willing to help us. When he heard the stories of miracles that have already happened on that mountain, he wanted to be a part of it. And he did 12 truckloads of materials up that mountain, sand and gravel and some wood and some cement blocks and cement bags. And he noticed that when I went to town and stayed in the hotel that I could not eat because there was no food in the hotel for vegetarian. But I was willing. It's okay to do a sacrifice. Jesus went through worse. Well, he told his wife, and they brought a nice basket full of food. Oh man, it was good. Rice and vegetables. Oh, it was so wonderful to have some food. I had asked Languida for a potato. I said if I could just have a potato, I was so hungry. She gave me 5 potatoes, and when I tried to cook it in the room there was something that looked like a way to cook. It looked like a microwave, but it didn't have the same capabilities. Anyway, the potato never got soft, but I ate it anyway. I was so hungry. God blessed. He gave us strength when we needed it, and when we got sick, He gave us strength. It was a joy to me to hug the little children. I just enjoyed it so much. I had some clothing that I had fun dressing them with. One man asked for a Bible, an English one. I had one, so I just gave it to him. As we left, it was with the understanding we'll be right back. I've been in that village now 4 times, and in 4 different events, and the 5th time is coming up in December. I'm really looking forward to it. I asked a man to prepare the windows and the doors, and that'll be $1,300. I don't have that money yet, but I know God will provide it. He went up there by motorcycle to measure. All the windows are not the same, and they're not square. So I asked him to measure the whole thing and make sure that it's all made correctly, and he's hand making those windows, welding them just to fit. That windows does not mean glass, it means the frame with iron bars in it so that the robbers can't get in. I need to teach the children not to throw stones. They don't know glass. It would be a fascination to them to break it because they don't have glass in their homes. They don't know about it. And before I put windows in there, I want to make sure that they are trained not to be throwing rocks. I want you to see the trusses come together, what a struggle it was for them to put them up, because these trusses are handmade. They're hand cut out of the forest. They don't have any power tools, and what you see, many of these things are cut with a machete. It's really a tough thing for them, but they're strong and no complaining. They just do with what they have. They're amazing. They really are amazing. So my transport in and out was by Matthias. He's not, well, he's a careful driver and does not go too fast. The first time he was going so fast, it frightened me so bad. I was crying, and he promised he would never go that fast, and he likes to come up. In fact, he came up to take Elisha down the mountain, and Elisha decided to work through the night and leave early in the morning to catch his plane. So Matthias got up on the church himself and was helping for the putting on of the tin. Really kind Adventist man. And here's a picture of Languida. She got a pair of glasses. She was so thrilled she could see to do her figures better. She has a heart of love, and she shared her stories with me, and I've shared mine through a translator. And she's had 4 sons and 1 died, and she had a daughter, and I've had 4 sons and 1 died, and I've had a daughter. And she has faith in God that whenever I take a lot of materials from her shop, and she asks when it will come, I say only God knows, and she's happy with that. She knows that God will take care of it. God has led her through a walk of faith on this church building project, and her husband was very kind too, wanting to protect me while the truck was being loaded, and he was allowing these materials to go without money, except when the cement bags were requested. He didn't allow that because he was afraid they wouldn't be able to do their project they were trying to do. They didn't have money to buy more cement. God provided, and we got the cement. So we're going back December 14 to do evangelism in Riangeti, where Languida and her husband are nearby, and we're going to go up on the mountain 2 or 3 days mornings to see what Jenny and I can do up there. It's really a man's job now. It's way up on the scaffoldings, and it requires a lot of strength to do what needs to be done up there. But we're going to encourage them, and we're praying that there will be enough money for the engineer. He's 25, and he's in Minnesota. He's trying to raise funds to go back and join us and be 100% his time up on that mountain while we're doing evangelism down in the town. So we're praying that God will bless. We know that this is his project. Because of this project, there was an amazing thing that happened. It was really a surprise to me what happened. There was a request for forgiveness from those who were confused and had fought us initially in the north. They say that there's no problem now. The president assured us. He came up himself and shook our hands and told everyone there he had come to affirm that this is all fine with the leadership. They're very proud of us. We can preach anywhere we want to in the north. The door is wide open. In fact, he thought of some areas where there needs to be another church plant, where areas that really need the gospel. Then Wilson came while I was in the hotel, and he looked at the pictures, and he said, "You need to write up this story. People need to see what has happened." He said, "I've been a pastor only 3 years, and I've learned so much from you." when he looked at the pictures, he said all this when he looked at the pictures of the pastor's office that we were making right beside the church. He said, I know the story. I know how the pastor was towards you at the beginning, and everyone knows it. And you have returned with love. You have created an office for him with a bed, a chair, a table, a lamp, a window and a door, and he's got his own space to sleep and rest, and a mosquito net, place to hang his clothes, his hat, and have his baptismal robe. He said, that's what Jesus says to do. And I have learned so much, he said, about forgiveness from you. I said, it's okay, everything's forgiven, it's all behind. God is in this thing. He's the one that's providing. God is doing this. He sent me. He told me to come. And I've just obeyed him and done what he's asked, that's all. And he went away with big smiles, and the pastor came. He shook my hand. He's so happy that I'm his friend. And he helped him. I sent him out into the market to find the lantern that I'm going to put in his office. He was so happy. God is in this thing. God knows how to do his work. We have prayed, and he has answered. He's the one that inspired us to pray. He's the one that told us to go back. These people have had a really tough time in their past history. Genocide, the hate, the beatings. They've seen so many killed. They need this from God. They need this gift from God. God loves them.